Hello again from the studios of Four Wheels Good. This week, John Stanley will create a distinctive yellow blur as he speeds through the country lanes in a Renault Spider. We'll also discover if you have the wrong type of tyres on your car. And later on, I'll be joined by a couple responsible for a new kind of learning system for new drivers. But first, Nicky Fox and I the other day, in one of our devilish moods in the office, decided to set up a head-to-head with a difference. What is it about the classics?
Visit a motor museum like this one at Molesworth outside Chester and you may break your heart.
Whether you're in love with their looks or even their value, most enthusiasts would like to take at least one of these home.
Now, you might not expect to find one of these in a museum.
But this week we put a 1957 Singer Gazelle and a Citroën AX head-to-head.
Have we lost our marbles? No, not really. For a start, both cars are worth around £6,000.
Here's the pitch. Imagine you're after your first decent car and just itching for an argument with the bank manager.
You know you want cheap insurance and low running costs, but you also know you want something that says you're special.
So if you're Jill the Lass or Jack the Lad, how do these two compare?
We chose the AX because it's typical of many small hatchback designs that have been around for a while. Citroën introduced this in 1987, and to keep sales going, they regularly offer good deals on a variety of different specs. This one is called, appropriately, the Spree. It's got pearlescent paint on an angular body, but I'm afraid that is going to suffer badly around these fiddly door handles.
Inside, the equipment level is fine. The trim fabric is called Atlas, and I have to admit it does look like the earth from a long way up. The back is for the very occasional passenger, but down there is regularly irritating. You have to be a ballet dancer to find the right position to move your foot from throttle to brake. I think I'll try and persuade Nicky to drive this one.
This Mark I Gazelle is an extremely rare model because it boasts a 1500cc Singer engine, which dates back to 1927. And don't snigger, it starts first time and is simplicity itself. Cheap parts and no nightmare electronics mean the car is a DIY dream. That is, apart from the front wings. They can rot here because of road dirt collecting underneath, and they can't be had for love nor money, so it's repair, not replacement.
In the boot, which is the size of the Mersey Tunnel, have a look at the spare. This is an old-fashioned cross-ply tyre, and I expect poor performance from these. But you can fit radials if you want a better drive. One thing you can't improve, though, every 1,000 miles you have to get out a grease gun and give the transmission and the suspension a squirt.
But there again, this is over 25 years old, so you don't pay road tax, and if you can work out your annual mileage, you could be in for a very good classic insurance deal. Now, forget the retro look. This is the real thing. Very nice combination of vinyl, walnut and chrome, complete with column change and a bench seat. And no dating jokes, please, but yes, there is bags of room in the back as well.
39 years is a long time. Which one of these two could you live with on the road?
The Citroën does 0 to 60 in 13.5, but this 5-speed feels pleasant, and the 950 engine revs easily, so it does feel quite nippy. I agree with Eamonn about those pedals, but once you've got it all together, you're okay for comfortable motorway cruising, even with a full load.
6.3 seconds after takeoff, and the Singer reaches 30 miles an hour. Wait another half a minute, and you could be cruising at 65. And once you've got used to this column gear change, well, you have no trouble keeping up with traffic. And if you don't like this arrangement, later and cheaper models have a floor shift. Oops, I was right about the cross plies and the brakes. Originally described as unusually generous, they do need a firm push, but they do the job.
For some of you, the Citroën will clearly have a few big advantages over the Singer, like longer service intervals, easier handling and 2 years free insurance. But remember, as soon as you buy this, it's depreciating, and so I suspect it's your image.
Take it from me, this is a real head-turner. I'm enjoying a commanding view from a surprisingly comfy seat, but the best bit, this car cost £800 5 years ago. The owner reckons he's spent about £1,600 on a respray and other bits and pieces, and now he's got a classic that's worth £6,000. Next year, maybe more.
In the end, it's a very personal decision, so just be honest with yourself. If all you want is a no-nonsense commuter box, go for this little fella.
On the other hand, if you're a petrol head and don't spend all your life on a motorway, here's temptation. And a bit of a pose. There you go. A crazy idea that actually worked. It wasn't so unfair after all, was it, to pit a classic against a nearly new car? And Nicky and I will be enjoying a similar bizarre head-to-head next week. She gets to drive a Wrangler Jeep, while I get the keys to the original military bone shaker it's based on, the Willis Jeep. If the straws are short, I'll get them. John Stanley, on the other hand, always seemed to drive the real head-turners. If you're walking along tomorrow and you think you've been passed by a supersonic banana, you're wrong. It's only John Stanley in his Renault Spider. But first, some history.
This little relic from the toy cupboard is a late 1950s Cooper Monaco, which was from an era of sports racing cars which were hugely successful. There was the Lotus 23, there were a number of them that operated both in Europe and in Can-Am in the United States. They didn't really breed any kind of road cars of the time. They were merely race cars that were very efficient. In the meantime, there have been kit car manufacturers and specialists who have created cars for the racing enthusiast, but again, they were not road cars, albeit they were sometimes used on the road. Now, however, they have actually developed a series of cars which are being offered to us, apparently for road work, but which are based on this original model design. The Caterham 21, which as yet I've not driven, seems to be one. The Lotus Elise is certainly an entirely fashionable item which I have tested, which is fun and very light and flawed. And there is the Renault. And here we've got the Renault Spider, which is their offering for this apparent model market. According to Renault, there are going to be 200 of these available in England, and about 80 of them a year. It's a very pretty car. It has the sexy gull-wing doors, which certainly make parking close possible. It has stunning good looks. The back end of this thing causes attention wherever you go, and the seating and the cockpit is big. It is very wide. The seats are Recaro, which are the sort of thing that any enthusiast tries to save up for their car. It is definitely a boulevard puller. It's the sort of car you want in the sunshine, and it's the sort of car you want to be noticed in, and that is certainly what you will achieve. It is a fashion statement. On the other hand, this car is hardly worth the space it's parked on if you want comfort. There is no hood. There is an optional umbrella which apparently will allow you to travel at 20 miles an hour. But on a rainy day like today, you are sunk. There is no heater, there are no sun visors, there's absolutely nothing that your average poser is going to want to enjoy. More especially, there is very little stowage. The space you see here in the front, actually it looks better because we've taken a plastic briefcase with all the tools out so that we can put our own things in. It is not really a very useful car for anybody. If, on the other hand, your love affair is with racing and you want to put these kind of clothes on and compete as an amateur, then a car like this seems screamingly obvious because it does have all the technology that Renault have found out of the race circuits. It has a 2-litre engine, which is basically the Renault Clio Williams. It gives you enormous amount of power in a very simple structure with rigid framework and an aluminium tub, which is, they spent 4 years creating. It was called the Mosaic Project, and they believe that they have found an incredibly strong structure, which certainly when you're driving it is rigid. You have the rollover bar, you have all the equipment you seem to want if you're going to drive to a circuit, get on the grid, race, and then drive home without a trailer or an escort car. And yet you can't, because if you want to compete, you have to have another Renault, a sports one that is specifically constructed for racing. So this car really seems to be a total waste of space until you drive it. Renault's pretty good at marketing. The Papa and Nicole is something we're all familiar with, and we in the media are even sent postcards from her when they're going to do another campaign. With the Spider, they themselves admit they're not sure who it's for, and so the sort of images they've been presenting to us are wildly romantic and bear nothing to the reality of trying to live with this car under mixed weather conditions and mixed traffic conditions. The cockpit's pretty sparse, as you'd expect, and indeed pretty trendy. You have just one button you can play with, which is this one, which gives you a heated front screen. That is actually all they've got to offer you. The central controls are what you'd want. They're just the oil, the temperature and a rev gauge. And in the centre you do have a speedo and some kind of a fuel gauge. I haven't actually found a mileometer, although they lay claim to one. And indeed in the initial brochures they talked about having a heater, which I also can't find. It's hard to decide really what to make of this car, because actually as a driver's machine it is splendid. But the problem is there's no way it's any use to you. It probably would work as a third car, as a toy. But at £26,500 there are an awful lot of enormously fun cars to drive, and they do have a roof, and they do really have this level of performance, so that it isn't the exclusive preserve of Renault that you can accelerate like this, or that it'll stop, or that it'll look that good. If you go out there in the market, there are a lot of cars for that money, and I'm not sure this one's really worth it.
John Stanley with his pet Spider. We have to reveal to you, though, that after John filmed that report around Greater Manchester, he and his wife drove to East Anglia, an open-topped car in a torrential thunderstorm. The downside of motoring, I think. But no matter what car you drive, the choice of tyres is as important as the car when it comes to grip, control and stopping power. Brian Smith, the UK boss of Continental Tyres, now gives us the lowdown.
Many people think that tyres are simply black and round and they're all the same. The fact is, tyres are very different. Different on different vehicles, different for different customers, for different customer uses. Now I'm standing here beside my own BMW. And on this BMW, which is quite a fast, high-performance car, we have got the Continental Eco Contact CP tyre. This is a very advanced tyre, approved by BMW for this vehicle, and it performs very well for the requirements of me as a driver, and also to suit the vehicle. If we have a look at the tyre itself, you will see that there is plenty of groove, which allows plenty of water dispersal, because that is one of the main features of a tyre in getting the water out the way, particularly at high speed and in cornering. But the great feature of this tyre is it has a silica compound technology in building up the rubber compound. The advantages of this and in the construction of the tyre mean that this car is exceptionally quiet. But of course, not everybody drives a BMW, a car like this. Let's have a look at some other cars. Right, so here we have obviously a Vauxhall Vectra, which is a typical family saloon. And fitted to this car we've got the Super Contact, which is a tyre that has been designed with Ford and Vauxhall and Mercedes to suit this type of vehicle. The tyre itself is a high-speed, all-performance tyre, being good in the wet, good in handling, good mileage, and of course is a tyre that will keep you comfortable in the car. The tyre itself, again the centre grooves which give plenty of water dispersion, and variation in the blocks which helps keep the road noise down. And now for something completely different and a real challenge for tyre manufacturers. It's only a few years ago that the MP vehicle was not really seen on the roads of Europe or the roads of Britain. Now you see them everywhere, and a real challenge for us. What tyres to fit to this sort of vehicle? Take a van tyre and develop it to fit really a people mover, or to develop a tyre from our car range? The answer, of course, was to recognise that this vehicle moves families, moves goods. It's multi-purpose. We need all the characteristics of comfort, stability and safety you expect in a car tyre. So our challenge was to create this tyre, which is derived from a car tyre, but reinforced for strength, for reliability, whatever the load, wherever you drive this particular vehicle. You have to remember that in contact with the road, you have 4 little footprints like that. That is the difference between safe driving and non-safe driving, the performance of the tyre. And it's not just the tread pattern and how it performs in clearing the water, it is also the construction of the tyre, how well it corners, how well it stops.
Brian Smith from Continental, and next week I'll be joined by one of the top brass at Michelin talking about new developments, the coloured tyre, and an invention which can actually help you drive on a flat tyre. After the break, some news if you're a motoring novice. Hello and welcome back to Four Wheels Good. Now, you've heard of the X-Files, but I'm joined now by Ian and Corrina White, producers of a video learning programme for motorists, the L-Files. Very welcome into the Four Wheels Good studio, but surely you're veering away from the traditional way of teaching learner drivers now. This is a new concept, isn't it, Ian?
Well, the theory test came in about 18 months ago, and now learner drivers have to do quite a searching theory test, written test, before they go on the road. So what we decided to do was a package that would train the learner drivers up to a high standard, ready for that theory test. Originally, the theory test was fairly easy to pass, about 90% were passing it first time, but then they raised the pass mark.
Oh yeah, they couldn't have people passing it.
Well, that's right. Now you've got to get 30 out of 35 to pass, and therefore only about only about 1/3 are passing it first time, 2/3 are failing. That equates to over about 50,000 a month of failing the theory test. So we decided to do a very comprehensive package that would prepare learner drivers for the test properly.
Right. What are your qualifications then? Why should we listen to you?
Well, I've been a Department of Transport driving instructor for 10 years now. And my husband has taught everything but learner drivers.
Right, so you teach them how to pass the test, and then you say, forget all that, this is how you should drive.
That's right.
Yeah. So between you, you've got experience of teaching people at all levels of driving.
That's right.
But this is the package that you were talking about, the L-Files, and it's huge, isn't it, really? What's in it?
Well, it consists of a video that's 3 hours long, but it's only meant to be watched in sections. It's not really a video, it's a distance learning package. And you watch a section of the video, and then you go to the relevant section in the workbook that also refers you to the highway code that we've included. Also in the package is an application form for a provisional driving licence, the theory test and the practical test, a competition entry form, and about half a dozen other leaflets of interest. So what we tried to make it is a very comprehensive package that people could buy off the shelves and study for the theory test in the comfort of their own home and gradually work through it. But we didn't just want to prime them for the test, so we covered a lot of areas in some detail that perhaps take the learner beyond what he or she needs to know.
OK, let's have a look at it.
Problems start when you try to mix drinking with driving. Like oil and water, the two simply don't go together. And yet, disappointingly, a substantial proportion of all fatal road accidents, nearly 1 in 7, involve drivers who are over the legal limit.
First, let's look at the legal limit, and it's really a question of take your pick. It's simply not possible to equate the number of drinks you can have and still be under the limit. All these drinks here contain roughly the same amount of pure alcohol in normal pub measures, but it's impossible to say how many of each you could have and still be under.
So that's an interesting movement away from the traditional way of teaching.
That's right.
Drink driving, isn't it? Why is that in it?
That's right. Well, it covers the whole aspect of driving. I mean, that particular clip was drinking and driving. It covers tiredness, all sorts of things involved when you're actually learning to drive in motorway sections, night driving if you're tired. So that particular section was very, very important. And obviously youngsters nowadays need to be aware of drinking, driving, drugs, etc.
We'll talk about youngsters in a second and motorway driving, if I may. But you've got some news for us about the drink limit, haven't you?
Well, the drink limit may well change in the very near future. We're a little bit out of step with Europe. Our limit is 80, whereas the rest of Europe is 50. And consequently, there are moves afoot, and it's basically a foregone conclusion that by about Christmas, the limit will drop to about 50, and therefore bring us into line with the EEC. It's impossible to equate how much you can drink to get up to that limit because it obviously depends on your age,
your video
your weight,
says,
and
you,
so
you
on.
can line up
Exactly.
drinks on a bar, and everybody's different. As far as I know, 10% of the drivers are young drivers, and they account for at least 25% of all the accidents. Now, it's obvious, really. Yeah. Somebody listens to you, they go, they do all this, they pass the test, then they drive like a bat out of hell half the time. So how can you help them?
Well, because especially with the video in particular, we've made with lots of the police footage intermingled, some transport research footage showing that with the crash dummies, things that actually can happen. And I think actually seeing it you know, visually will have some impact on these youngsters, and hopefully make them think about their driving.
And how
being
important is the
responsible.
motorway section? Because you can't practice that, can you?
Exactly, that's right. I mean, and obviously most people nowadays, once they pass their driving tests, the first thing to do is want to go on the motorway without any extra training. So hopefully this will help in some way to give them an idea and hopefully go back to a professional instructor for a couple of lessons afterwards.
We've got a whole pile of leaflets and videos here, but what's this little thing on the top here, Ian?
Well, actually, we recently won the Prince Michael Road Safety Award. We're the first and only theory test package to win the award, and basically it's for outstanding services to road safety. Okay. We're absolutely delighted to get that in June of this year.
An innovation, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, from the classroom to the workshop as we join John Wright and Inside Motors.
And it took me ages to work this one out. When you're fitting these spring clips, the temptation is to try and turn the spring and cup to mate with that. Once I'd worked out that it was better doing it the other way around, I saved myself absolutely hours doing this job. That's it, and turn it, and you're in. Right, these are the final 3 springs to put on. That's the one from the bottom that holds the bottom of the shoes together. That'll go on last. And these 2 are for the handbrake adjuster. And that thing just goes in there. And then that spring attaches in that little hole there. And then that goes down to there. This is a fully sealed bearing. There's no reason or no requirement to grease it. You can normally tell when bearings are fitted because the note changes as you hit it with a hammer. I don't know if the camera and the mic picked that up, but there was a different ring as the bearing finally hit home. Right. Pair of circlip pliers. Right. Squeeze a circlip in, pop it down, in it goes. Right, we'll just degrease it because, as you know, when they manufacture the brake drums, they put a protective coating over all the surfaces that they've machined to protect them, so they look pretty when you get them and they don't go rusty. But when you're using them with brakes, that's got to be got rid of, and we're using the brake cleaner again to do that.
More car maintenance tips from John Wright next week on 4 Wheels Good. But that's it for this week. Next week, experience the power and the glory of some magnificent Ferraris in the company of classic car expert John Stanley.